A child at the grocery store grabbed my arm. My mom says, "Pretend you know us, please." I looked confused. She whispered, "That man is following us." I was in the cereal aisle comparing granola brands when a little hand suddenly grabbed my arm. I looked down and saw a girl, maybe 8 years old, staring at me with eyes full of fear. She whispered, "My mom says, pretend you know us, please." I froze, completely thrown, until she leaned closer and whispered, "That man is following us." I turned, and the second I saw him, my stomach dropped. I recognized his face from a news clip I saw a week earlier. I didn't know it yet, but this grocery store trip was about to turn into one of the scariest moments of my life. My name is Aya Brooks, and what happened next reminded me how fast a normal day can become something else entirely. Before I continue, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Trust me, this story will stay with you. It was a calm Sunday morning, the kind where nothing feels rushed. I had just finished a call with my mom, who always reminds me to stay aware and don't forget a jacket. I laughed and promised her I would. Grocery shopping on a quiet morning had become kind of therapeutic for me since moving to this new town. I liked wandering the aisles with a cup of iced coffee, choosing vegetables like I actually knew what I was doing with them. Families filled the store, kids helping parents pick cereal, couples arguing softly over which pasta sauce to buy. Everything felt ordinary and safe. I even noticed a mom and little girl earlier, the girl pointing excitedly at a stuffed toy hanging near the gift aisle. The mom looked tired, the kind of tired parents earn, but she smiled at her daughter with warmth. Nothing about them stood out as strange. I was halfway through my list when I seen him for the first time. He was standing near the dairy section, staring at the refrigerator door like he wasn't really looking at anything. He wasn't dressed suspiciously, jeans, jacket, hat pulled down slightly, but there was something about the way he stood there, completely still, scanning the room when he thought no one was looking. I brushed it off. People zone out in stores all the time. I put bread in my cart and turned the corner. As I walked, I listened to a voice message from my brother Jason, joking about how he hoped I wasn't living off frozen meals and protein bars. He's a police officer and takes every chance to remind me about safety and using my head in public. I rolled my eyes and laughed to myself as I grabbed peanut butter. Everything was normal, calm, quiet, the kind of day where danger didn't feel close. Then a tiny hand wrapped around my arm, pulling me out of that calm like someone flipping a switch. The little girl from earlier stood beside me, eyes wide, voice shaking. "My mom says, pretend you know us, please." For a second, I couldn't move, couldn't speak. My brain tried to catch up while my heart jumped into high gear. This wasn't play. This wasn't a prank. There was fear in her voice, real fear. And when she whispered that someone was following them, my skin prickled. I slowly turned my head, and that same man from the dairy aisle stood halfway down the row, staring directly at us, pretending to compare snack bars. In an instant, my morning grocery trip became a moment where instinct, fear, and a child's trust collided. And I knew right then I wasn't walking away from the situation pretending nothing was wrong. Stay with me, because what happened next shows why listening to instinct and helping strangers matters more than we think. And before we move forward, hit subscribe and comment where you're watching from. You never know when one moment could change everything. The little girl's hand tightened around my arm like she was afraid I might pull away. And that grip alone told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't mistaken. She wasn't playing. And she wasn't overreacting. Something was very wrong. I bent down to her level, forcing my voice to stay calm, even though my heartbeat suddenly felt like it was echoing inside my head. "Hey, sweetheart," I said softly. "What's going on?" Before she could answer, her mother rushed toward us, trying to look casual, but failing to hide the panic in her eyes. She put a gentle hand on her daughter's shoulder and whispered fast, her voice barely steady, "Please pretend you know us. He's been following us for the last 10 minutes. Her words hit like a shockwave. My chest tightened. 10 minutes. That meant this wasn't a misunderstanding or someone simply walking in the same direction. This man had been tracking them through aisles, watching them, waiting. I forced a small smile like we were all just friends meeting by accident. "There you are," I said loudly enough for anyone nearby to hear. "I was just looking for you both." The mother nodded quickly, relief flickering in her eyes as she played along. "Sorry," she said, matching my tone. "We got distracted." To someone passing by, we might have looked like three people casually chatting. But underneath that thin layer of normally sat panic, thick and suffocating. I casually shifted my body so I was between the man and the little girl. That's when I finally let myself look directly at him. He was still pretending to look at snacks, but his eyes flicked up. And the moment our eyes met, everything in me froze. He didn't look embarrassed or surprised like someone caught in an awkward situation. He didn't look confused or guilty. Instead, his expression stayed flat, unreadable, calculating. His eyes didn't show hesitation or shame. They showed recognition, not of me personally, but of a moment breaking like he had been caught before he was ready to act. My stomach dropped. That look was cold, focused, intentional. I turned back to the mother, lowering my voice. Do you know him? She shook her head quickly. No, he followed us from the parking lot. He stood behind us at the entrance without grabbing a cart. He hasn't picked up anything. He just watches. Her voice cracked slightly. The little girl pressed closer to her, clutching her sleeve. I could see the thin tremble in the mother's hands. The kind of shake you can't stop when fear takes over. And you're trying so hard to stay strong for your child. Okay, I whispered. We're going to stay together. We'll walk toward the front slowly like normal. I lifted my phone like I was checking a shopping list, but I opened messages instead. I typed to my brother, emergency. A man is following a mom and child grocery store. Please call police. My brother replied almost instantly. Stay where people are. Do not confront him. I'll alert dispatch. I tucked my phone close, forcing my face to remain calm. Let's go grab snacks, I said cheerfully. The kids would be mad if we forgot. The little girl nodded, playing along bravely, though her voice wavered. Yeah, we promised. We pushed our carts together toward the front. Every aisle felt too long. Every turn made my nerves spike. I kept checking reflections in freezer doors and metal shelves, tracking the man without directly looking at him. He followed, always a few steps behind, sometimes turning down an aisle, only to reappear at the next one too quickly for coincidence. At one point, the little girl whispered, barely audible. He looked at me outside. He smiled. I got scared. My throat tightened. No child should ever have to say that. The mother whispered. I told her to find a woman if she got separated. I didn't think she'd need to. Her voice broke. She looked like she was shaking on the inside, but holding herself together by will alone. Halfway to the checkout lanes, I spotted a store employee and waved him over like we were asking where cookies were. When he stepped close, I leaned in slightly and said quietly, someone is following this family. Please get security. His face shifted instantly from polite to serious. Stay near the registers, he whispered back. We kept walking. The man turned into the aisle behind us again. I heard his footsteps this time, slow, intentional, like he didn't care if we heard anymore. My heart punched against my ribs so hard it hurt. I placed a hand on the little girl's back, gentle, but protective. You're doing amazing, I whispered. She nodded, brave tears sitting in her eyes. We reached the front. The lights felt brighter. More people moved around us. Cash registers beeped. Suddenly, normal life surrounded us again. And yet, danger was still only feet away. The mother whispered, what do we do now? I inhaled slow, steady. We stay here. We don't go outside. Help is coming. She nodded and squeezed her daughter's hand. The little girl looked up at me with trust I never asked for, but was determined to honor. And then I felt it. The shift, the energy changed. Something was about to happen. Security wasn't here yet, but the moment of confrontation was closing in. The calm before reality breaks. That man wasn't done. And neither were we. Standing near the checkout lane, I tried to look casual, but my shoulders felt tight and my palms were damp. The grocery store looked like any other Sunday scene. Carts clattering, kids asking for candy, someone scanning coupons. But I was painfully aware that danger stood exactly 3 aisles away, pretending to browse chips while keeping us in his sight. The mother, Sarah, squeezed her daughter's hand and whispered to me. He keeps pretending to shop, but he hasn't picked up a thing. I nodded. Well, stay right here. Somewhere visible, somewhere loud. We stayed close to the front, carts beside us, pretending to debate between gum flavors just to look normal. Every second felt stretched, heavy. The hum of the store suddenly sounded too loud. And yet, every footstep made me flinch. I stole a glance toward him again. He stood near the end of the snack aisle, pretending to check a row of energy drinks. He wasn't grabbing anything. He wasn't comparing prices. His head tilted just slightly in our direction. And even from a distance, I caught the intensity in his stare. He wasn't browsing. He was studying, waiting. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was my brother. Police en route. Do not let them leave the store. Stay visible. I typed back quickly. We're at the front. He's still watching. Right as I hit send, the little girl tugged my sleeve. He moved, she whispered, voice shaking. He's coming this way. My heart jumped. I kept my voice steady. Stand close to me. Sarah pulled her daughter gently against her side. I stepped slightly in front of them, placing myself between them and the open grocery floor. I didn't look for him directly. I used the reflection of the freezer door near the register. His pace had changed. No more slow drifting. He was coming toward us now. Not fast, but direct. Like he finally decided to act. His eyes locked on us. No more pretending. His face calm in a way that terrified me more than anger ever could. Fear crawled up my spine. But I didn't move. I reminded myself, stay calm. Stay still. Stay visible. Suddenly, a worker pushing a cart of returns stepped into his path, and he paused, annoyed. as the employee apologized and squeezed past. That interruption bought us seconds. Seconds that mattered. I leaned in toward the mother and whispered, "We're walking to the customer service counter. Slowly. Follow me." We didn't run. Running triggers predators. Running looks like prey. We walked side by side, carts rolling, heads up like nothing was wrong. I spoke out loud, pretending conversation. "What kind of snacks do you think the kids would like?" The little girl whispered back, voice tiny, "Anything with chocolate." I smiled like we were talking normally. Chocolate's always the winner. Every step felt like walking across ice. The customer service counter wasn't far, but my heartbeat made each footstep feel loud in my chest. Halfway there, the man turned again, adjusting his path toward us. He was trying to stay subtle, but you can't hide intent in your eyes when you're chasing someone. And his eyes were focused only on us. Just then, I saw them. 2 store security guards entering from the side hallway, scanning the front area. I didn't wave or shout. I didn't want to trigger him. I simply made eye contact with one guard and gave the smallest nod toward our direction, hoping he could read the fear in my face. He did. I saw his posture change instantly. He whispered into his shoulder radio. We reached the counter. The employee behind it smiled politely. "Hi, how can I help you?" I kept my tone calm but firm. "We need to stay here. There's someone following this family." Her eyes widened slightly. Then she nodded, voice steady and professional. "Absolutely. You're safe here." Behind us, footsteps changed. Quicker now. Purposeful. He was closing in. The security guard intercepted him before he reached us, stepping right into his path. The man stiffened. You could feel the moment shift in the air. A crackling tension like a storm about to break. "What's the issue?" the man asked. Voice low, too calm. The guard didn't flinch. "Sir, we need to speak with you." His jaw tightened. His eyes flicked toward us. That same cold stare that made my stomach twist. Then, in a quiet voice, Sarah whispered, "Thank you." I didn't feel relief yet. Not until police arrived, but for the first time since that little hand grabbed me, I felt control returning. We had moved from panic to action, from fear to protection. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. Sometimes bravery isn't running or fighting. Sometimes bravery is staying steady, thinking clearly, and choosing to protect someone who needs you. Even when your legs feel like they might shake out from under you. Help was steps away. Safety was close, and he knew it. This moment was where everything began to shift and nothing about what happened next was predictable. The security guard stood firmly between us and the man, his stance steady and unshakable. Even so, the air around us felt tight, like the moment right before a storm breaks. I could feel the mother and her daughter pressed close behind me, their fear quietly echoing my own. This wasn't just a strange encounter anymore. It was danger, real and present. Standing only a few feet away, the man straightened his jacket, acting offended. "Why are you stopping me?" he asked, voice controlled, but cold. I didn't do anything. His tone was calm enough that if anyone had walked up at that moment, they might have believed him, but it was too smooth, too rehearsed, like someone who had practiced sounding harmless. The security guard kept his voice professional. "Sir, we received a report. We just need to speak with you over here." He gestured toward a small office near the entrance. For a second, the man didn't move. He stared past the guard directly at me. His eyes weren't angry or shocked. They were steady, emotionless, calculating. In that moment, I felt like prey being assessed. It made my skin crawl. Then he shifted his gaze to the mother and her daughter. His jaw flexed almost imperceptibly. That tiny movement chilled me more than anything else because it wasn't frustration. It was annoyance, an irritation at being interrupted, as if whatever he planned wasn't finished yet. I stepped slightly more in front of the little girl instinctively. I didn't plan the movement. My body did it before my mind caught up. I could feel her small hand gripping the back of my jacket, clinging to safety. Just then, a voice rang out from behind us. Firm, authoritative police. "Step away from the guests." 2 officers appeared at the entrance, moving quickly but with control. Relief hit me like a wave so strong I had to steady myself. They approached the man and for the first time his expression cracked. A flicker of something sharp, anger or realization crossed his face. "Sir," one officer said, "we need you to put your hands where we can see them." He hesitated. It was only a second, but it stretched. My heart thudded painfully as that second opened into a possibility. He might run. He might try something. He might. He lifted his hands slowly, still trying to appear calm. "This is ridiculous," he muttered, voice strained now. I was just shopping, but the officers didn't waver. One moved behind him. One stayed in front. Slowly, methodically, they secured his wrists. It wasn't dramatic. There was no yelling, no sudden struggle, just quiet resistance and a tightening tension that told me this wasn't someone who feared police. This was someone who didn't expect to get caught. They began walking him toward the exit. As they passed us, he turned his head towards Sarah and her daughter. His expression didn't show rage or regret. It showed something far worse. A cold acknowledgement. A silent message that sent goosebumps along my arms. This isn't over for people like you. Sarah clutched her daughter tightly, hiding her face in her shoulder. I placed my hand gently on her arm to reassure her. The little girl whispered shakily, "Is he gone?" "Yeah," I breathed, voice low. "You're okay now?" One officer stayed behind to speak with us. "You three did exactly the right thing," he said. "You stayed together. You stayed visible. And you told someone. That's what saves lives." He glanced toward the exit. "We recognize him. He's under investigation in multiple places. You probably saved that child from something terrible." Sarah's knees buckled slightly, and she pulled her daughter into a tight hug. The kind you give when you realize how close you came to losing something priceless. Tears slid down her face. Silent but heavy. The officer continued making notes, asking what happened step by step. I answered everything as clearly as I could, even though my voice trembled. Part of me still felt suspended in fear. Another part flooded with relief. It's strange how danger leaves the body slowly, like it doesn't want to loosen its grip too soon. When it was over, the officer thanked us again. As he walked away, the little girl suddenly stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me. I froze for a second, surprised, then hugged her back. She was shaking lightly. "Thank you," she whispered. Those two words hit me harder than anything else. Not because they made me feel heroic, but because they made everything real. A real child, real danger, real fear, and a moment where a stranger had to trust another stranger in order to stay safe. When Sarah stood up straight again, she wiped her eyes and whispered, "I didn't know what to do. Thank you for not turning away." I managed a small smile. "You did the hard part. You asked for help." She shook her head. "Most people don't listen. But you did." As the automatic doors opened to let customers in and out, sunlight poured into the entrance. It felt strange, like stepping back into normal life after touching the edge of something dark. And standing there in the middle of an ordinary grocery store with shopping carts clicking and store announcements humming, I realized that danger doesn't always shout. Sometimes it walks quietly behind parents and children waiting. But courage can be quiet too. It can look like a little girl whispering for help. Like a mother holding her daughter tight. Like a stranger stepping forward because doing nothing is not an option. And that day in aisle 6, courage won. The moment the police escorted him out of the store, the world around me slowly came back into focus. The beeping of scanners, the soft chatter of shoppers, and the hum of refrigerators all returned, almost too normal for what had just happened. It was surreal. I stood there with Sarah and her daughter, feeling like time had slowed for us while everyone else kept moving in their regular Sunday routine. Sarah wiped her eyes again and crouched down to hug her daughter tight, holding her face in her hands. "You did so well," she whispered to her girl. "I'm so proud of you." There was relief in her voice, but also exhaustion. The kind that comes only after you've been brave for longer than your nerves can handle. The little girl held on to her mom and then looked up at me quietly. Her eyes were still wide, but the fear that had frozen them just minutes earlier was fading. "I just listened like you said," she whispered to her mom, but she was looking at me, too. There was something heartbreaking in her voice. Not fear, but a kind of stunned innocence. A child shouldn't have to be brave like that. I knelt down to her level and smiled softly. "And that's exactly why you're safe. You did everything right." Sarah stood and pulled me into a real hug. Not polite, not quick, but one that held weight, gratitude, relief. "Thank you," she said again, her voice breaking. "If you hadn't helped us, I don't even want to think about it." I hugged her back, feeling my own breath shake. "You asked for help. That's incredibly strong. Most people never do." She nodded, tears forming again. "He was in the parking lot watching us. I thought maybe I was imagining it at first." She swallowed hard, but when he kept showing up aisle after aisle, and she got scared too, I knew I couldn't pretend it was nothing. That hit me because I've had those moments before, the ones where your gut whispers that something is wrong, and your brain tries to brush it off to avoid looking paranoid. Most of us ignore that feeling. We don't want to be dramatic. We don't want to inconvenience anyone. We don't want to be wrong. But that day, a mom listened to her instinct. And because she did, her daughter got to walk out of that store safely. A manager approached us and quietly asked if we needed a private area to sit and breathe for a moment. Sarah accepted, her legs trembling now that the adrenaline was fading. I followed her to a small break room where an employee handed us water bottles and tissues. Inside that little room with fluorescent lights and the hum of a vending machine, reality settled in. My body felt heavy suddenly. Like all the tension I had been holding finally demanded to be felt. My hands shook as I took a sip of water. I wasn't scared anymore. I was drained, emotionally stretched thin from holding it together. My phone buzzed. A call from my brother. I answered quietly. "You okay?" He asked immediately, his voice tight. "Yeah," I breathed. "He's in custody. Security stopped him until police came." There was a long pause on the other end before he spoke again. His voice softer. "You did good. Proud of you." It meant more than I expected. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like someone who simply couldn't walk away. But sometimes not walking away is the most important thing you can do. When we finally stepped out of the break room, sunlight streamed through the front windows. People pushed carts. Kids begged for snacks. A cashier cracked a joke about coupons. Life was carrying on untouched. And for a moment, it felt unreal how close something terrible had come to disrupting all this normally. At the exit, the little girl tugged on my sleeve. "Will I see you again?" she asked quietly. I smiled gently. "Maybe someday. But what matters is you're safe. That's what's important." She hugged me again, tiny arms squeezing tight, and I hugged her back. When they left the store, her mother gripped her hand like she would never let go again. I stood there a moment longer, watching them walk toward a world that could have broken so much for them today, and didn't because a child trusted her voice, a mother trusted her instinct, and a stranger decided not to look away. And I realized something deep in my chest. Bravery doesn't always look like fighting. Sometimes bravery looks like noticing, listening, stepping forward when you could easily step back. That day didn't leave me scared of the world. It made me grateful for awareness and connection. We save each other more often than we realize, sometimes quietly without even knowing one another's names. Before I left, I took one last breath in that doorway and whispered to myself, always pay attention. Always help when you can.